Tom's a really nice bloke. Now, that's the first line he said. He's a bit of an all-round paddler when it comes to the sea. He's happy on tide races, in fast kayaks, whatever they are, sea kayaks, surf skis. Nothing says about SUP, so I quite like the guy. He's also a bit of a Robin Hood, I've discovered as well, because what he does, he takes old canoes that nobody loves and he does them up, and then he sells them on to people that may not be able to afford these brand new spanking all singing, all dancing boats. I don't know. I might contact him if I'm after a sea boat sometime. Tom has started up a business, and if he moves just to the side, you'll see his shameless advertising of his business, which I think is really cool. And I'm sure he'll tell us more about that. And he's quite a renowned sea paddler. He's done some epic trips and some epic solo trips. So hopefully he's going to share some of that with us tonight. So over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks for that introduction. And I know that you guys, are used to talking about open canoes and lots of things like that. So some of this information could be a little bit different, but it's all good because for you guys with your canoes, the OC ones are coming in strong right now. So on the sea, we're seeing lots of outriggers and OC ones. So it's all the same sort of stuff. So what I've learned is, we're talking about SUPs, I know, but but it's a craft. And if you're on a prone paddleboard, a stand-up paddleboard, an open canoe, a surf ski, a sea kayak, it's all the same thing, and we're all enjoying the same environments and getting similar stuff out of it, no matter what level and all this sort of stuff. So it's something which I've really learned. And I used to have a thing against sit on top kayaks, I was like, that's not a real sea kayak, and all this sort of stuff. But I've learned in the last couple of years that that's completely untrue. And I've met some amazing people, I've run some amazing sit on top trips. So it's all the same thing. So some of the information I'm going to tell you is definitely transferable. So I'm just going to share my screen and then I'll start chatting. Here we go. Okay, can you see my screen? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, you're good, Tom.
Brilliant. So, fast sea kayak and ocean ski. So this is kind of what I love, and this is what I'm kind of progressing with all the time. And I'm just going to run through kind of what it's all about. And again, all similar stuff to standard sea kayaks, but fast sea kayaking and ocean ski is hugely progressive, and it's very much a mindset. So a little bit of a schedule for you guys. So tonight's talk, fantastic intro. Thanks for that. That's all good. A little bit of Mythbusters. What's an FSK and where will you find them? What's a ski? Goals and expectations. Some of my expeditions and some future goals and plans. So, straight on to the Mythbusters. So, true or false? Now, lots of things flying around, and it would be the same with canoes. You get your little whitewater canoes and your big 16-foot or even 18-foot expedition canoes, and there's lots of things, design and hydrodynamics, and more rocker, less rocker, more freeboard, less draft, all that sort of stuff. You could talk about boat design for hours, as we know. All your paddles, lots of different types of kit and differences. So fast sea kayaks are really fast. Now, it's untrue. So I know fast sea kayaks are what they're called, FSKs, but they're not actually that quick. Now, what's important to understand is that they're efficient. So a standard sea kayak probably cruise at around 4 knots. With a group, it might be around 3 or 3.5 knots. A fast sea kayak will cruise at about 4.5, and with someone paddling, you know, strong, will be able to push it at 5 knots or maybe even just over. And if you think about a bike, you know, like a bike could easily go 10 miles an hour, like, you know, maybe even 15, cruise at around 12, you know, so they're not that fast. So people say, oh, you need to slow down, you're missing things, you're doing this. And I'm like, well, I'm on an open crossing for about 3 hours. You know, I'm paddling towards that headland for an hour, and I can see a lot of what's happening, you know, so you're still engaging with the environment. Ocean skis, you know, probably talking about 6 knots, you know, and ocean skis can catch most, well, say most, you can catch a lot of the ocean surface waves, you know, downwind. So you can go, you know, double that quite easily at that point. Quick, but not that quick. They're actually efficient. So fast sea kayaks are not suitable for standard paddling and touring. So again, untrue. So we're all different shapes and sizes, and even a faster boat could be shorter, wider, whatever. Some of them function, so jumping down to the 4th one down, some of them function really well without a rudder. You can still surf them, you can still play, you can do everything. So boat design, sea kayak design is changing, and it's kind of becoming quite a varied thing. So a lot of shorter, kind of easier boats to paddle, kind of classic touring boats, and then you've got your FSKs, and then people kind of try and bring out kind of an all-round kind of boat. But yeah, and then people are kind of dedicating to certain area of the sport. Greenland paddling, super popular. But fast sea kayaks, the more modern ones, are super versatile and really usable. So fast sea kayaks are high volume, they're only good for touring. Untrue again. So fast sea kayaks are a really good one, like a Rockpool Taran. You can train in it, so you can paddle it empty as well as expedition, and that's just a sign of a well-designed boat. So, you know, a boat that you can load up and paddle empty. And I was talking earlier about Winona Prospector canoes, my favorite canoes, because again, and most canoes, you can load them right up, or just paddle them empty. And yeah, they're a bit slower to turn or whatever when they're full, but a decent boat will still glide and it'll still work really nicely. Cool. So ocean or surf skis are unstable. So again, untrue. Lots of different boats out there, and what's really amazing about modern design is that you can get a really stable boat and it will still be really quick. So in the old days, people would get on a surf ski and just go kabosh straight in the water, and they'll be like, never doing that again. And now it's definitely not true. You get really stable ones, and my fleet is made up of stable skis, but they're still super quick. So I can take people around, and you know, we can explore and just get to lots of places a little bit quicker than kind of a sit on top or a slower sea kayak. So this is one thing which I hear quite a lot, which I find quite funny, or I just watch people's reactions. So it'll be, I've been paddling for years and I don't need coaching, or he can't coach me, or I don't need that. And that is the silliest thing ever, because we all need coaching. Even if you think that you're like the best kayaker or the best canoeist or best surfer in the world, you know, every Olympic athlete out there, most Olympic athletes will have a coach. And I think that's super important to just kind of like get our heads around that we will always get more out of a coach or coaching for ourselves. And what's really cool is that even if someone's teaching you some stuff you already heard before, or they're saying some stuff which you think's not important, we all gain knowledge, and perspectives are super important. So, you know, even if you think, oh, that guy's only been paddling 5 years, he doesn't know what he's talking about, I can guarantee you, if you go paddling with them, you'll pick up on, even if it's small things, even if it's like 2 minutes of knowledge from 2 hours session, that 2 minutes could change your life. And I'm going through a little bit of coaching right now, and my paddling is just going crazy. It's really good. So wing paddles are only good for paddling forward. Again, untrue, very versatile, different shapes and sizes for everything. Can you get a wing canoe paddle? I haven't actually looked into that. But if you can't get a wing paddle for a canoe, you will be able to soon, undoubtedly. Things are changing all the time. Okay. Okay, so FSK, so fast sea kayaks, so different ones that are available. Rockpool Taran, which is the one in the photo. Curtin Inuk, so that was kind of one of the original FSKs, the Inuk Classic from Curtin, designed by Rob Falloy. There's the Inuk Ultra 20, which is available, which is a super big, like crazy big boat, which would be perfect going around Svalbard or something like that. But there's something on the horizon from Curtin, which is quite exciting. Valley Rapier, which was designed for some of the American races. There's an 18-foot one, there's a 20-foot one, made to kind of fit in with all the restrictions and kind of like guidelines on certain races. Tide Race Pace has been brought out to kind of like compete in the marketplace, and actually there's people which are dedicating to those crafts, so they're kind of holding up really well. P&H Valkyrie, been brought out. It's this plastic FSK, slightly controversial. Plastic's quite flexible, so the hull will flex, which is kind of like riding a full suspension bike, you know. So when you're trying to ride a full suspension bike up a hill, your energy is being absorbed by the suspension. FSKs, if they're made of carbon or composite material, they do stay super stiff, and your energy will be put into forwards momentum a little bit easier. You'll be able to maintain your pace, which is good. Epic 18X, Epic is an American brand which specialises in surf skis, and they've got the 18X, which is kind of a surf ski with a closed cockpit on it. So they're quite well known and renowned. That's a good boat as well. SK UK Quantum is a concept boat, or a boat which was brought out in the last few years, and that's the boat which I used for a while. I was sponsored by SK UK, and I believe now that boat is discontinued. And then at the bottom, I might be wrong though, might not be, don't know. The Freya, which was, so Freya Hofmeister, you may have heard of her. She's an amazing paddler which has circumnavigated most continents in the world, or most huge land masses in the world, and I believe she's going around North America right now, but she's been around New Zealand, Australia, South America, Ireland, Iceland. She's just like on a mission, but she's had her own boat, or her own kind of versions of branded boats for a while, and her Freya's built by Point 65, I believe, in Sweden, but a great bit of kit. So, and there's probably lots more. There's loads more, you know, different brands around the world. Stella have got one as well. Surf skis. So, surf skis, kind of like fancy sit-on tops, but super quick, a bit like a K1 as well. You know, just made super good. The ergonomics are amazing. The seating position is much more suited to a more powerful catch. And leg drive, the buckets, they're made really well. And you know, if you haven't tried it, I really think you should try it, because it just changes everything. Changed my life last year. I mean, I've tried it in the last few years, but I didn't want to get into it because I knew what would happen. I've already got a shed full of kayaks, and I was like, I can't deal with something else right now. But last year I just decided to commit, and again, absolutely amazing. Lots of brands from all over the world. Surf skis were kind of born from, you know, South Africa and Australia, guys paddling out on huge longboards to save people. And then they were like, I'd be much quicker if I had a kayak paddle. So paddling big longboards, huge surfboards with kayak paddles. And then slowly they started to develop. So it's kind of like a cross between a huge surfboard and a kayak. Obviously, kayaks have been around for 5,000 years or something, developed by the Inuit, used for a whole range of things like hunting. So it's kind of like a merge of two worlds. And coming up from the Southern Hemisphere, we've got some amazing designs. And now the Northern Hemisphere, we're producing some amazing boats as well. So loads of brands down there. And again, you know, if you want to know any more about that, then you can message me. So I've just been through this a little bit, but what is the difference between an FSK and a ski, and what's the point? Why would you paddle a ski and not an FSK? So an FSK, and you'll see this on social media. There's so much noise on social media at the moment, like, you know, trying to ask this question, figure out what the difference is between a boat that's that long, this long, that seating position, this kind of thing. There's lots of information, and it's easy to get confused. But basically, you know, a ski is kind of developed to be a more of a racing craft. It's to sit on top, you know, so you're not inside it. And obviously a kayak, you sit inside it, which is better for colder environments and climates. So although I love ski, I also love FSK, and now we're in winter, I'll be in the FSK because, you know, we keep warm. There's a huge amount of blood in our legs, and if we can keep that out of the elements, keep our legs dry, keep our legs warm, then usually that will just come up through our bodies and keep the rest of us warm. Being an FSK, being able to roll it is useful. However, you know, on a ski, the remount, you just climb back on. But I guess the biggest difference is, you know, the rudder configuration, the way they're designed. You know, ski's super progressive, you know, and as you go up through, you just kind of move up and up in stability. You get a less and less stable boat, which if you can paddle that, will give you an advantage and give you some more speed. On a ski, you'll get an understern rudder, which will lock into the surface of the water a little bit better and hold itself. Sometimes when you're on a wave, you know, the back of the boat could be kind of out of the water a little bit. And if you've got an overstern rudder like an FSK, that could release, and then you'll be broaching. So with a ski, there's always connection with the rudder, which will just allow you to maintain that directional stability. So I'm not going to talk any more about what the differences are, because again, you know, I'm going to move on. We haven't got much time, but seriously, if you get the chance, come down and I can show you for sure, and you can try it for yourselves. Right, too much talk about kit. Yeah, so we're talking about kit, what these boats, those boats, paddles and whatnot. So let's talk about me and you. So what I wanted to mention here is that FSK and ski is all about mentality and ethos, and the same with racing sups. So we're coming across lots of racing sups on our downwinders, and we're doing lots of things, and even collaborating with some of these guys, because it's all the same thing. We've all got the same mentality, and a lot of the time we're talking about downwinders. We're going from headland to headland. We're going to try and link some waves. You know, we're going to try and get the fastest time. You know, it might be slightly different to going out in a bay and just pootling around and exploring. It might be like, right, get to that boy, you know, time trials and all this sort of stuff. When we go around some of the big islands, it's like, right, come on, how far have we got to go today? Let's keep this moving. You know, fast and light, prioritizing equipment, trying to cut down on weight. So it's kind of like alpine climbing, you know, and I kind of see there's a huge link in mentality to people that go out and climb, you know, multi-pitch routes, or, you know, long, fast days in the mountains. It's very much like that. And it's just, yeah, like enduro bike riders and all that sort of stuff. It's that mentality, road bikers. So it's, yeah, it's just kind of like expectations. And when you get when you get like someone in FSK in a group, and then you get someone in a Romani in a group, you know, or if you like were going out and you were known a prospector and you had someone turn up in an OC1, you know, it kind of, there would be a difference in, you know, people would be going off in different directions. So you kind of got to agree on the expectations and outcomes. It's kind of just an approach and a mindset. So, although I love downwinders and training and stuff like that, I love expeditions and open water. And what I say about skis or FSKs is that they make open water and flat water fun. So trying to maintain your speed and keep your momentum going and your rhythm, trying to drop into a flow state, you know, no matter what the water's doing, if it's super rough, if it's super calm, there's going to be fun. And you know, some of these big open water trips and crossings, we might look for it to be quite calm, so we can get there in a quick time, but actually it could be better with a following wind. So it's kind of like lots of different things going on. So some of the trips I've done in the past: Ireland and Scotland, the Celtic Empire. So a couple of big expeditions which I've done in the last couple of years are big circumnavigation of most of the islands in Scotland. We were actually supposed to go around the Outer Hebrides as well, up through here. We were going to cross from Tiree, I don't know if you can see my pointer, to Mingulay, and then we were going to go up around the outside. And the same with Orkney, we were going to go up and around. The only issue we found was when we got to Tiree is that we had a huge weather front coming in, which was due to last for 3 days. And one of the things is like, well, we need to keep moving. Sitting on an island for 3 or 4 days, waiting for conditions, is not kind of like fluent. So we just decided to keep paddling. It was an absolutely amazing trip, and we landed or paddled past lots of different islands. We did lots of open crossings, crossed the Minch twice. One of the times was in the widest point of the Minch. So super cool trip. And up in Scotland, the wildlife's absolutely amazing. I was with my friend Steve Bowens, top chap. We had a lovely trip for that summer. And as you know, as you can see, we came back down through. So we went this way around, so clockwise, and we came down through the Caledonian Canal, which was absolutely amazing. However, you know, after being on the west coast and on through all these islands and, you know, around the Hebrides, coming back down through some locks was it was not quite as scenic, but still amazing. That was a fantastic trip. And then last year, Ireland, and this was a solo trip. And something super cool about this trip was I set off, you know, to see how well I could do and to push my limits a little bit. And, you know, none of this stuff's new and it's not what it's about, but I thought, you know, how could I do this in a slightly different way? So I set off around Ireland and from Scotland, anti-clockwise, which again, you know, most people are like, if you go to Ireland, make sure you go clockwise because the wind will be with you on the crux points, and that's just the way to do it. So, you know, I was like, no, you know what? This boat, I was paddling the SK UK Quantum, which is really good at headwinds and beam winds, and I was like, I can push through that. And then when I get to this point, I'm going to have the wind with me all the way, or hopefully, anyway. So I crossed from Scotland and I just kept paddling, and it was foggy. I couldn't see a thing, but I managed to cover around 40 miles, maybe a bit more on the first day. Made it to Ireland, never been to Ireland before, you know, and it was just great. You know, I just arrived in Ireland, knocked on a door of some fella, you know, filled up my water bottles, and it was just fantastic, you know, just to meet some super friendly people. And then coming around, you know, every day, just pushing it as far as I could. And as you can imagine, as soon as I got to here, I had some headwinds for quite a lot of the trip, but it was fine. You know, at this point down here on the southwestern tip, which is quite a full-on place, where the tide actually splits, so it hits Ireland and comes around, and it was, yeah, that was interesting. Big winds, big rain, but that's all part of the fun. And the thing is with Irish West Coast is that you know, you got deep water, big ocean swells coming straight out of deep water and hitting big cliffs, so you get a lot of clapotis and interesting conditions. But absolutely amazing trip, and that was this year's plan as well. I was going to go back to Ireland this year with a better mindset, better equipment, better fitness, and I was hoping to, and a strategy to try and break the record, which, you know, I just couldn't do because of COVID, which is crazy, but it's all good. COVID is a crazy situation. This is my friend Steve Bowens on the Scottish trip, and this is our crossing from the north tip of Cole to Canna, which is a beautiful island just west of the Isle of Rum. And I love this video because he'd just been to the toilet, and he'd had his spray deck off, and a big wave came and just completely drenched him. So he spent, and then he dropped his pump. So he's like, I think he had a cockpit full of water at the point, and just catching some down runs. It was really, really fun. And then this is my boat on the west coast of Scotland, and I was just dropping down. And this was a hard day, pushing. That's Achill Island in the background with the cloud on there, pointing to the screen. I'll use this. That's Achill Island here. It's a beautiful place, but that was a hard day. That was a long day, lots of headwinds, and squally showers, and just a huge slog. But I made it around this little headland, and there was another group of kayakers there out with a guide, and just saw them and chatted away and cheered me right up. But the next day after that, I woke up super early because I knew the weather front was coming, and I had to get to Achill, and I pushed hard, but the weather, it was coming over this like some sort of wing, so it's speeding up and catabolic winds and all that sort of stuff coming down through the little valleys and off these big hills, and it was speeding up, and through this going into Achill Sound was crazy, like so windy and walls of rain. I couldn't see for 20 minutes sometimes. I was just holding ground until the wind stopped and I could just keep going. And at one point, and canoeists, you all do this as well, so you need to know, everybody, that I was a super keen canoeist for a lot of years, and all the strokes that you do in canoeing I do in kayaks, and especially cross decks and all that sort of stuff. So one of my sort of trademark strokes in the sea kayak is to do huge cross deck strokes, and then to keep it going on the other side, and just to bring the nose round. So I did that when it was super windy, and as you can see on this boat, it's got quite a big kind of bow, kind of high sides, and it was so windy. I went like this, I went crack, and my back cracked, and I felt it, and I was like, that's not good. So I just couple of like big sweep strokes to get my nose round. I held ground, the squall went, and I paddled to the bank, and I just led there. I just led there for about 20 minutes or half an hour, and I thought I'd done something really bad. But I don't know, I kept paddling, got to Achill, put my tent up, got some food, went to bed, woke up, and I couldn't believe it. I woke up in the morning and I was absolutely fine. But that was a kind of a big learning point for me, and you canoeists as well, with your big 16-foot laden boats in strong winds, trying to do those big cross-deck strokes. There's a huge amount of strain on your body, but something which you've got to your advantage is that you can use your legs a lot more, and your kind of, your kneeling position's a little bit more powerful. Probably get your head down and use your body a bit more, and the lower body. But it was quite scary. But it's a good photo. I like that photo. In Ireland, coming into some of these places, you're just looking on a map and hoping that these places are going to be suitable to land. You push hard to get to these places, and and what's amazing with the Celtic Empire is that there's kind of, it was all built around the sea, so there's little harbours, and most little inlets were used at one point, or are still used by craft or fishermen or whatever. So when you push to somewhere that looks like it's going to be suitable, it often is, which is really amazing. So this was one of many rocky landings, and the tide's coming in right now, but it's a perfect place to load my boat, and I'm loading up, and I'm about to set off for another big day. And this was actually the day before that previous photo. But yeah, I just love this photo because it kind of just, hanging out in these lovely, amazing rocky places, and beautiful clear water with sea urchins and jellyfish everywhere. It is amazing. So this was down near the southwest tip, and a big day, coming through lots of clapotis and coming out of lots of wind and rain. I made it to this tiny little harbour, little kind of quayside, and there was a couple of old fishermen on this fishing boat, and they were just heading out, and it was all big and foggy, and they were going out just to check the pots just on the outside of the harbour, and I was wet through by this point, absolutely drenched. Everything's drenched, you know, synthetic sleeping bag, but completely wet. But it was amazing, you know, just meeting amazing people. And there was some fella, and I walked up to get my water bottles filled up from somewhere, and this guy stopped in a BMW. And he's like, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I've come into the harbour, and I'm just, you know, need some water." And he's like, "Oh, it's fine. I live up the top of the hill. Jump in my car." And this guy had like this 2016 brand new BMW, you know, with like, you know, leather seats. And I'm like, "Mate, I'll get changed and I'll walk up, because right now I'm wet through. I stink of piss." I'm like, "It's all good." He's like, "That's fine." And the yellow house at the top of the hill. But I went up there, and he's like, "Mate, get in the shower," and he beans on toast. Fantastic. These people you meet are amazing. Oh yeah, and then I just slept there because there was nowhere else to sleep really. Night paddling. So on some of these big trips, whether it's an expedition or, you know, whatever, night paddling's pretty standard. If the tide's flowing and the wind's flowing, or the wind's dropped and the tide's flowing, you just got to go, make up time where you can. And this was after quite a full-on day, going round Hook Head in the south of Ireland, and I made it round, and it was some big conditions, wind against tide and all that sort of stuff. And I just kind of limped into this tiny harbour, and then went to the chip shop, which was shut, which broke my heart. But I always had food to eat, obviously, but it's never very exciting. Some sort of pasta and soy chunks or something. But that's a cool thing. So future stuff. So what's happening in the future? So downwind sections. So on the skis and in the FSKs, the downwind is just absolutely amazing. So I love the Scilly Isles, I love Lundy, and trying to get to these places with a following wind is super fun. Usually with the Scillies or some of these other bigger islands, there's quite, and they're exposed, so there's lots of swell, which kind of messes up. There's tide kind of moving everywhere, kind of messes up the clean runs. But you know, I absolutely love setting off for a day, and this is kind of a 3.5 hour trip from my base in Plymouth to Salcombe. It's absolutely amazing downwind run. And off of here in the south of Devon is where you'll get some of your kind of like your biggest and best horror stories from a lot of paddlers, because this is big swell. You know, East Poole, or Poole Point, sorry, is this the most southerly point in Devon, close behind Lizard Point. So this gets a lot of swell. So along here is pretty full on. And if you get the chance on a lovely summer's day, you should definitely, on a flat, no wind day, paddle out of Salcombe and explore this in your canoes. Hope Cove to Salcombe, absolutely classic trip. But this is kind of like what I love to do really are these trips and these sections. And when I go on expeditions now, I'm hoping to link as many downwind runs as possible. So it's slightly different to a lot of people's kind of idea of paddling, where they'll be weaving in and out every little nook and cranny along the coastline. You know, amazing surfing here, amazing surfing here. So most people would never even paddle that far in a day. But when you're going down, you know, full on downwind and catching lots of runs, it's absolutely amazing. So Ireland is happening, and that's going to happen next year. I'm really lucky to have really supportive bosses. So I work for a school. I run an outdoor education department day to day, and get school holidays. But the best season to do some of these trips is in like June and July. Midway through August is quite often that the weather starts to change and the storms come through, and the autumn can hit early sometimes. So it's going to happen next June, hopefully. And yeah, I've got a quite exciting, quite a good strategy for that, which is going to be really cool. And then I've got some big expeditions coming up, which are in the cold places of the world, and I can't say anything else about that right now. But yeah, stay tuned. Some of you, I'm sure, on social media have seen a few things. There's lots of groups which I post in now and again. So yeah, stay tuned for some cold expeditions. And then Ocean City Paddle Sports. So, you know, one of my aims is to get people involved and engaged with the ocean environment, and surf skis and FSKs and kayaks. So I run sea kayak expeditions and back to basics bivvies. So the aim is to leave all your kind of social media behind and get back to nature and catch your food and cook up some grub and, you know, interact with people and nature. And they're proving quite popular. And something which I do as well is just get people out on surf skis. I've got some stable ones, and show people how amazing it is to have a downwind paddle, you know, and catch some waves, and just connect with their flow state, really. Flow's a huge part of it for me, for all this sort of paddling. And it's just a bit of a project of mine. We've got a good training group down here. And yeah, that's what we're doing. So that's a really short, sharp run through of kind of ocean skis, and FSK, and kind of what the crack is and the mindset, and the standard sort of paddling. But something which I just love is this sort of stuff, and circuits and time trials. So that's kind of it, guys. If you're you know, keen to ask some questions, then go for it. I'll leave it on that one. That one looks good.
Tom, can I pitch in, if you don't mind?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you've mentioned mindset a lot. So at what point within your paddling career did you start developing the mindset that you had now? And what sort of kind of approach was there a strategy, or was it just something that's been ongoing and developed along the way? Yeah,
nice one. So it's really interesting, because I started off same as everybody. So I started off kayaking with some friends in a swimming pool, and then I went to a harbour and messed around, and then I kind of got into white water, and then I was obsessed with open canoes for a while, and every craft which I've ever paddled, you know, I've kind of always kind of like tried to get the most out of it possible. So what happened when I really got into sea kayaking, which for me, the kind of like what set it off for me with sea kayaking, was I paddled whitewater kayaks and I paddled canoes, open canoes. Sea kayaks for me are very much kind of like those two combined. So, you know, you get the touring capability of a canoe, but the maneuverability and kind of like just the ability of a whitewater kayak. You can get through the wind, you can power through those waves, you can surf those waves, you know, you can roll it. So it really sort of clicked with me. But as I started doing more sea kayaking, you know, exploring bays and going further, and doing lots of stuff and making it to the Eddystone and getting out to Lundy Island, you know, I was kind of very much into skegless boats, you know, traditional boats as much as possible. But one time I went to the Scillies and back in a day. So I rang my friend and I said, right, are you up for a good trip? Are you up for a really cool one? He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, let's go to the Scillies and back in one day, 24-hour period, let's do it. And he's like, yeah, all right. So anyway, we did it, and we got to the Scillies and we slept on a beach for 2 hours. We drank some coffee and then we paddled straight back. And it really just opened my eyes to suddenly like, whoa, like we've just done that. Like that's a good trip, but we didn't do it particularly well. And I definitely think I could have paddled better and planned it better. And then my friend said to me like a couple of years later, or even a year later, he's like, do you want to try this boat? And I said, right. And then I tried a Taran, Rockpool Taran, and I could get to the Eddystone, like probably like, you know, a good 45 minutes or an hour at that point, less, you know, than I would do before. And I was just like, whoa, that's amazing. Like these boats are made to just munch the miles and just cruise through, and you can catch the waves. So it just started to develop like that. It's like, you know, I can do so much more. And then I paddled around Cornwall in 3 days, and I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And it just slowly just started building it up. So I used to love getting out to islands, doing island circuits and standard sea kayaks. But then as soon as I started to kind of like explore what the possibilities of, you know, a faster boat, better technique, you know, better planning, you know, it just started to click into place. And it's a similar thing that happened with surf ski recently, or last year. you know, I started paddling surf skis most days, and I'm just like, the capability is amazing. You know, like it's just, you can catch waves and slink waves, and the downwind ability is just phenomenal. So that's kind of what it is. It's kind of like just natural progression. You know, I come from a climbing background as well, and I'm always pushing the grades, always, you know, trying to tick off different things and make different moves and build up strength. And the progressive nature of climbing kind of came into sea kayaking a little bit, and I'm like, I can do that island, or I can get there, or I can paddle around that in a bit of a quicker time, or I can make that downwind run or that section. It's just that climbing mentality a little bit, I guess.
Thank you.
Cheers. Any more questions, guys?
Yeah, I got the mileage that you cover in a day is incredible. I mean, I remember as a kid, I did Jack Sound, Ramsey Sound in a day. It was nobody else would remember this, but it was a JC Super 400 I was paddling at the time. But that was like an epic day for me. And you're doing that before breakfast.
Yeah.
What mileage, you know, are you doing per day?
Well, so around Ireland, the aim was 40 nautical miles a day. And I can't remember exactly what the average was. It was slightly less than that, because sometimes on a bad weather day, I'd only make 30. And then sometimes I'd make that back a little bit somewhere else. I think the biggest day was around 65 nautical miles. I think I had a bit of a wind behind me at that point, and I just had to, I was meeting my girlfriend at the airport, and I had to get back to Scotland. So I was like, right, I've got to just push this one out. But yeah, so usually 40 miles a day. Next year, when I go around Ireland, it's going to be aiming for 50 miles a day. But if you do have a following wind, if you do have some conditions which allow you to do that, you can cover a lot more. Unfortunately, I kind of had some technical issues around Ireland, which means that my downwind ability wasn't quite where it should have been on my trip around there last time. But I was still happy with the mileage I was doing. But next year I should be able to get that mileage up quite significantly, I'd say. But it's amazing, you know, you're falling asleep, like massaging your shoulders, and you know, and it's pretty full on. But yeah, it's good. It's good aims to have.
50 miles a day, 50 mile a week is about what I'm reckoning for an expedition.
Yeah. Well, you know, canoes are, I don't know. Down a big river, if you were going down a huge river in a canoe, you could get some serious miles. But it's nice to have, or with a sail. If you guys had sails on your canoes, you can smash out the miles, can't you? It's amazing how fast they can move with a sail. What I struggled with open canoes with sailing was like some sort of dagger board. I remember I used to have to like get like a really powerful, like some sort of like jam or like hanging drawer or something going on to try and like get a dagger board on the boat to hold my position and direction. But I'm sure you guys have figured all that out, and you can get the proper kit now. But I don't know. But yeah,
there are some amazing sea kayaks with sails on it. I don't know if you know the book, The Badarka.
Yeah.
For sails, downwind sails.
Yeah, so some people are using sails on kayaks now, but it's kind of like, so a lot of the trips I do are like unsupported, and you have to kind of do it through self-propulsion as much as possible. So if I was to do a big trip, or, you know, manage to get a good time on something and I used a sail, it would be kind of like, wow, we used a sail. So it's like, it's crazy, because you could use, obviously,
still self-sufficient.
Yeah, I know, but unfortunately, it's got to be through kind of paddle power only, a lot of these things. But it depends on your perspective, you know. A lot of that sort of stuff is just, you know, personal opinion and whatever. But yeah, nice one.
Tom, you're pretty well known for doing solo trips. Do you find that to be quite liberating, or do you get some really interesting, exciting moments where it could have gone wrong?
Yeah. So, I mean, so for me, you know, I mentioned flow state a lot, and it's definitely about that. And and it's the same if you're moving quickly in the hills, you know, if you've got a mate with you, which has got a similar mindset, you get along really well, you're used to each other, you know, you can kind of like bounce off each other a little bit and keep each other going. It's absolutely amazing to paddle with people that have the same sort of fitness and to have the same mindset is a lot more fun quite often than solo paddling. But you know, I find that sometimes I worry about people quite a lot. So when people come out with me, or we do things, or I do things with other people, I'm like, where are they? Are they okay? Which is obviously exactly what you should be doing. But sometimes it kind of like messes up the ability to kind of like drop into flow state and to kind of like really just adapt to the conditions and move in the way that you need to. So, you know, but I guide as well, obviously. And if I was to take people out, it was obviously be a little bit more chilled out and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, you definitely are looking after people. But some of these bigger trips, you know, I'll be like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you absolutely sure you want to come with me? You know, it's kind of like, and some of them I'll just be like, I'm just going to go on my own, because it's just kind of like, it's just me, and, you know, and I don't have to feel, you know, concerned by anybody else. It's kind of what it is, really. But I love paddling with good friends that are up for it, and, you know, super on it. It's great. Thanks, man.
Tom, last week, Ollie talked about, Ollie Sandeman talked about a trip that they did round the west coast of Scotland. And towards the end, when they were absolutely knackered, he was talking about hallucinating. Have you experienced that on any of these trips when you're really knackered?
Yeah. So what? so I don't hallucinate, but what happens is sometimes I like fall asleep when I'm paddling, which I don't even understand how that's possible. But I'll be paddling and I'll still be paddling, and I'll be like falling asleep while I'm paddling. I really don't know how that's possible, but that's happened a couple of times. And also, you know, I find that if you're hallucinating, then you're either severely dehydrated, or you've got some sort of serious calorie deficit, or you're just absolutely wasted. So usually when I'm swearing at the wind and shouting at, you know, just random things, or just like, you know, getting a bit aggravated, I'll just make sure I eat something, and just drink some food, or even if it's possible, I'll stop, you know, just get warm, just sort myself out a little bit, and then keep moving. Because obviously, you know, if something was to happen, especially on a solo trip, it'd be quite a bad situation. But you know, when I was on the beach in Ireland, you know, sometimes I'd be looking out and it would be like pretty big, you know, even in Cornwall, sometimes it's huge. And it's kind of like you get those kind of voices in your head a little bit saying, get on the water. And then it's like, I don't think that's a good idea. Get on the water. Do you know what I mean? It's like something kind of takes over you, and it's like, you don't have a choice. It's like, you're going to do it. And as simple as that, you know? So it's kind of like, it's not hallucinating, but it's kind of this kind of drive to get there. Like, there's no stop, you can't stop, go. So it's kind of like this weird kind of situation. But yeah, it's good. It's good fun. It's not all about desperate, like crazy trips where it's like the point of no return, or do or die. It's like, it's super fun, and every day you get to the end, or even a big downwind section, you get there and you're just like, that was so good, and you're just buzzing for days, you know. And an expedition where that every day is like ultimate freedom for sure. It's amazing. Yeah. Any more questions, or are we all happy with?
One question. In your picture when you were in Scotland talking about the island, I noticed your pedal. It looks like you don't have a feathered pedal. The blades were just flat.
Literally.
Yeah, sure. So
not that yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of feather on them. You might be able to see that. So it's around sort of 10 degrees. So the reason why you have feather is because the the paddle's always where you expect it to be. So if you're on a downwind run or you're, you know, in rough water and you have to brace, you know, the blade's always there. You can always kind of like rely on, you know, especially if you start getting tired, you know, you don't catch your blade and then you don't go in, you know, whatever. But there is a little bit of feather. Everyone's different, but there is a natural amount of rotation or kind of like movement which happens with your body when you're paddling. And I find for me, it's around 10 degrees. And that allows me to get the most power. It allows the blade to enter the water at the right angle. But also, I've just found that over paddling hundreds, thousands of miles, I don't get blisters on my hands. And yeah, my calluses kind of, you know, might get saturated and it might look like I've got kind of blisters, but I don't get sores on my hands because the paddle's working in the right way, and it's not kind of rubbing and all this sort of stuff. Sometimes, you know, all this kind of like feathering where if you think about, you know, how many paddle strokes you do over 1 mile, when you're paddling 40 miles a day, you know, all this kind of feathering and twisting and whatnot, it does start to strain your wrists and your elbows, and you start to get friction, you know, blisters in your hands. It's just crazy. So yeah, but even a lot of kind of K1 surf ski or, you know, racers will have a very small amount of feather. Oscar Chalupsky promotes no feather. And again, it's just because on a surf ski you are bracing a lot, especially in big water. So he just says, you know, the brace is always there, you know, which is absolutely right. But everyone's got an opinion and everyone does things differently, but that's what I do. But even in wind, you know, headwinds, I won't, for me, unless it's super strong wind, I'll just leave the feather like that as well, you know. So it just works well. Cool. I think are we good? Are we happy?
Anybody else got any questions?
Thanks. Thanks for having me on, guys. And you know, it's been great to chat. And a lot of this stuff I've talked about is applicable, you know, with your open canoes and, you know, the sup paddling and whatever, you know, this way of doing things. One thing I would say, which I've learned a lot, you know, about, is to go as lightweight as possible. So, you know, that jar of peanut butter, which you think is just a jar of peanut butter, that jar weighs quite a few grams, and just a few grams, you know, if you then build it up with lots of other things, suddenly your boat is so heavy, it's crazy. And some of these canoes, you know, open canoes, they're so big, you can just get so carried away with taking all your crap. And it just, you know, a heavy boat is a slow boat. And in Scotland, you know, this quantum, this boat here is huge. So you can just keep piling it full of stuff. And I took far too much kit in Scotland, you know, like a 4-season tent, because I thought we might be on an island in a storm for ages. But all the way around Scotland, I gave away so much kit, just getting rid of it, you know, taking it right back to basics. And then around Ireland, you know, I didn't even take shoes. It was like, I just, you know, had bare feet or wore my water shoes, you know. So it's just kind of like cutting everything down, and it just helps to keep it going. So my rule is that I've got to be able to lift my kayak when it's fully laden, even with water in. So that does limit the amount of water which I carry as well. Or if I can't limit the amount of water, I'll have a kind of a grab bag just inside one of these hatches. I'll have kind of like a big bag, and I'll have the heavy stuff as central in my kayak as possible. And I'll grab the big bag and I'll grab the heavy stuff out of the central area of my boat, and I'll just get rid of it, run it up on the beach or whatever, and then I'll carry the boat up super quick after that. So it's just kind of like about being sensible with your admin.
You're right, it is a different mindset, because I wouldn't go anywhere without my Dutch oven.
Yeah, so mate, Dutch ovens, Kelly kettles, like, you know, I love all that stuff too, but seriously, bloody hell.
Yeah.
What else have I seen recently? There's lots of all these kind of teepees and stuff around, and some of them are made of canvas, and they look like amazing tents, but that's, you know, 5, 6, 7 kilos of tent it's a big tent. But amazing if you're going to make a base camp, you know, and paddle from one place, and, you know, whatever, it's all good, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, we've got a nylon one with a with a tent heater that we take in our canoe as well.
Yeah.
Completely different mindset here, mate. We're just, you know.
Yeah.
Tom, thanks ever so much. It's been really, really good. I've learned loads tonight, so thanks very much.
This was a With Dave production.